everyone, and welcome back to Tahr Talks. Today, we have with us Mr. Devansh Shah, who is a social-political activist and a policy consultant.
That's some fancy words. But, sir, can we hear from you?
Please call me Devansh. But yeah, I agree. Those are some fancy words. In the very nitty-gritty of what I do is I work with organizations and I work with young people trying to put their ideas into the political space, helping them understand what the government has to offer and what they can do for the government. Because you see, this is a very dynamic space where for years we've had senior bureaucrats and senior politicians. Because let me say this, okay, when I say the word politics, what do you imagine? Do you imagine a room filled with young dynamic people in suits, or do you imagine people with long flowy snowy beards and white hair debating?
It's like 100%.
Exactly. So that is the change that we're trying to bring, and that is what we're trying to do.
Well, that is so interesting because I'm going to be honest. Because as you mentioned it, I am very young, and when I think of politics, I only think of the latter image. And I also believe that my entire generation, when we think of politics, we think of what the social media has to tell us. So what would your views on that be?
It is very interesting because I would say there are two sides to this coin. As the generation that grew up with the internet, we are so in tune with it that we refuse to believe anything that doesn't come from it. What we watch on media, what we consume on social media, it often divides us into certain ends of the spectrum. And that's not usually the picture, because you see, no matter the political party, no matter the political alignment, there is always national interest that is kept above everything when it comes to these spaces. But it's not something that we see amongst a certain section of the society today, because they would rather align themselves with a more extremist view that they see from social media, not realizing that all of that might just be an act.
Exactly. And, because when you're on social media, not only have I seen so many other accounts, not official accounts, post things about politics, but I've also seen official accounts of numerous parties. If I were to name one, like INC, if you've seen the Instagram social media, it targets a very certain population amongst the youth. And that is so interesting to look at as a whole.
See, it's the new age narrative wars that are now being fought on social media instead of on ground battles. Where opinions are now being formed in the screens in your hands, and people are casting their votes based on those opinions. It's a saddening reality, but what is now happening is there's also a section of creators which have come forward, trying to do away with misinformation, trying to do away with the entire false news narratives that are going on there, trying to mislead people, trying to scare people, incite fear. And I believe that it is in our own interest that we encourage such creators.
Now, recalling back to Sir's talk on for TEDx, I remember you giving 2 lakh meals for enduring COVID and oxygen. That's really good.
Thank you so much. That was actually a family initiative or a society initiative, so to say, because I just graduated, moved back home. I'm a proud part of the COVID batch, because we had our job offers rescinded, we had our educational offers rescinded, and there was a lot of uncertainty at that point. And in that uncertainty, to see so much suffering around us, it really struck a chord within us to see that if we are in a position to do something, because after graduating, having family, from Vadodara, having lived in Vadodara, we obviously knew a lot of people. We were able to move a lot of things. We were able to get together, ensure that we had a mobile kitchen set up where, in a very clean and effective manner, we had a WhatsApp channel and Twitter channel set up. The people would send in their requests with their COVID reports. We'd mark down their dates, and for 14 days, they'd get free food from us. And then that converted now into a food truck in front of the biggest district hospital of Vadodara, where we now serve close to 500 to 700 people every day.
So as you mentioned your work with policy consultancy, I would, this is something so many Good Shepherd students especially were curious about. How do you get into work like that?
All right. The way I want to begin about this is asking a question to your viewers itself. And I want you all to take a moment and really think about this. When was the last time you visited a government website? Just think about it. And I know some of you are going to be like, oh, we did for filling out passport details or for paying an electricity bill or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is there must be domain interests that you have. Like, Some must be interested in environment. There must be some who are interested in foreign affairs. There must be some who are interested in water conservation. Pick out the ministry that you like. Just head over to their website for a while. Go to their notices section. So now what has happened is, I think from the past 7 years, what has happened is the government is now becoming more accepting of the fact that there's a lot of untapped raw young potential in the country. You do have the steel framework of the country, that is the bureaucracy. But a lot of the times what happens is, because of the conditioning of the system, the bureaucracy is forced to work in a certain manner. They're not able to cut through the red tape more efficiently. And that is where you need young talent to come in to show you the mirror of the realities that's happening on ground and to come up with the better ideas and new ideas. Again, like I said previously, we're the generation that grew up with the internet. Technology is not alien to us. Technology is an extension of us.
Yeah.
So similarly, these ministries, these ministers are now taking on young professionals in a variety of capacities where you can directly work with them. Another good example is Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog is the public policy think tank of the government, which was originally the Planning Commission, which has now been converted to Niti Aayog. It's a more efficient format, and they take on interns and young consultants right from after 12th grade. So to all the students seeing out there, if you as soon as you cross your 12th, maybe this is a space that you could explore before heading to college. Another beautiful example I would give you is actually an example of a friend of mine. I don't know how. He's a media student. And during college breaks, while the rest of us were trying to figure out where to go, what to do, he was busy cold emailing Rajya Sabha MPs and Lok Sabha MPs to see if there were vacancies and internships available at their offices. And through those cold emails, he realized that he could now work with members of parliament, understanding how public policy takes place. And that eventually led him to becoming one of the leading public policy guys at Twitter, when it was Twitter.
Yeah.
But so yeah, these are some of the opportunities that are open there. Again, something that I spoke about in my TED talk is there are a lot of fellowships out there today. They will give you an understanding and a holistic view of the space without putting too much burden on you. And mind you, they all come with financial considerations, because obviously you need to survive in an unknown city by yourself.
Yeah.
So they do have a substantial stipend for you that you can use. You can use to survive and figure out your way there. So this is some other ways that young people can get involved with public policy.
This is such a change, because as someone who is young, as the youth, I think a lot of us have this image of politics in our head, but it's very incestuous. It's the exact same family, or the exact same people who are like repurposed again and again into the same policies. But to see programs and plans through which we can actually actively participate in politics is changing. And I hope, a lot of us young people out there who think that they cannot participate realize now they really can.
That is something that I strongly believe in, advocate for. Actually, I'd like to share an anecdote with you. Recently, I was interviewing for a fellowship myself. And during the interview, they asked me if I could bring about one change in the polity of India, what would that change be? And my answer to them was, I would get in more young people into the space. And the interviewer looks at me, smiles at me and says, you're a young chap yourself. How much younger do you want to go? And I said, you'd be surprised at what 16-year-olds and 18-year-olds have ideas these days. There are things that we can't think of that they've already thought of, because they are somebody who've been exposed to a lot of information at a very young age. What they choose to accept and think about it depends on the individual themselves. But again, that has led them to having some brilliant ideas these days who could do fabulously if just given the chance.
No, I agree with that so much, especially because you mentioned the overload of information. We as an entire generation, we know that the internet and mobiles play like huge role in that. But again, as you mentioned, based on the individual, if we are able to find the right information, a lot of us do have ideas we want to share, ideas we want to put across.
So for that, I would recommend that you also, now the way policy making works is that a lot of the times these ministries will come out with different policies. For example, Ministry of Youth Affairs had come out with the National Youth Policy Draft 2 years ago. And during that time, they had put it up for public consultation. What it meant was anybody who had ideas about it could write to the ministry and send in that information. We ourselves led a nationwide consultation where in 75 districts of the country, we held programs. We went to schools, colleges, telling them that this is what the government is offering you. Now you tell us what more do you want. And we compiled that into a 200-page doc and sent it across to the minister. Now, again, these things are easily available on the internet. All it requires is a simple search from our ends.
No, I get that 100%. Especially because you mentioned there's something like that happened I must be like, what, 14, 15 at the time. I had no idea about this. And it does take an effort from individuals. I agree with that.
So thank you so much for sharing your views and perspectives with us. One of the burning questions I want to ask you, and everyone is told to ask, is what is the stance on the Trump's tariff war?
Okay. Oh, that's a hot burning question. All right. I have a conflicted view on Trump's tariff. On the one end, I am not entirely thrilled. Again, being a Gujarati, the stereotype stands true. Not entirely thrilled about the volatility in the market at the moment and the way things are shaking out. But you see, I see a silver lining in this as well. What we're seeing with Trump's tariff is that he's placed almost all the other countries on a 90-day hold, which includes India. So for us, at the moment, we're still back to the old tariff rate. But for China, they're operating at 125% tariffs. And Chinese have again imposed 125% tariffs on America. Now, what this means good for us is now Chinese goods have become a hell lot expensive in America. And that creates space for Indian manufacturers and Indian companies to take over that space. You see basic appliances such as blenders and your mixer grinders and your mobile phones. It's the irony of the century that an American company, Apple, had to fly off 5 planes full of Apple products to America just to escape the tariff board. It's a beautiful thing for our country, though. So there's a lot of business opportunity that I see there. I see great things in store for us. And if we're able to truly capitalize on the semiconductor wave and the appliances wave, I think the markets will boom in India.
All the good Jew uncles in us can calm down for a bit now.
Absolutely.
So, well, American politics is always so interesting. Like, trust me, no matter where you are in the world, American politics is the one thing that has to grasp it.
China has banned Hollywood films also.
China banned Hollywood films?
Yeah, they did.
Well, that was interesting to know. So, well, that was my final burning question for you. And thank you so much for joining us on Tahr Talks today. Your views have been very insightful, trust me when I say that. And we would love to have you back whenever you're here.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure and I've really enjoyed spending time here. Thank you so much.